fell in heavy sheets, blurring the highway into streaks of gray and silver. Headlights cut through the downpour like narrow tunnels of light. But beyond them, the night was endless, swallowing everything in silence. Daniel tightened his grip on the steering wheel. It was almost midnight, and the road stretched on like an unbroken ribbon through the countryside. He hadn't passed another car in nearly 20 minutes. That was when he saw her. A figure at the side of the road, soaked through, arm outstretched, thumb raised. She wore a long coat, dark with rain, and her hair clung to her face in heavy strands. For a moment, Daniel thought of driving past. After all, who in their right mind picked up a stranger this late, in this weather? But something in the way she stood, fragile and shivering, made his foot ease off the gas. Against his better judgment, he pulled over. She slid into the back seat without a word. The smell of rain and earth followed her in. Her voice was soft, almost drowned out by the storm. "Thank you. I've been waiting for hours." Daniel nodded in the rearview mirror. "No problem. Where are you headed?" She gave him the name of a town about 30 miles ahead. A quiet place. Daniel had driven through it once before. He made a small joke about how she'd picked the worst night for a walk, but she didn't laugh. Instead, she kept her eyes on the passing darkness, her face unreadable. The miles rolled by in silence. Daniel felt the weight of her presence behind him, like a shadow pressing against the back of his seat. Every time he glanced at the mirror, she was there, still, calm, her pale face catching flashes of light from the dashboard. Then, somewhere between the 22nd and 23rd mile, he looked again, and the seat was empty. The coat, the wet footprints on the floor mat, the lingering smell of rain, they were all still there. But the girl was gone. His chest tightened, his hands gripping the wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. He slowed, then stopped in the middle of the road, heart pounding in his ears. The storm hammered down, blinding him, drowning out every other sound. He opened the door, stepped into the cold rain, and called out into the night. No answer. When he returned to the car, the back seat was exactly as he had left it. The footprints, the faint impression of someone having sat there, real, solid. Yet she was nowhere to be found. As the wipers dragged across the windshield, he finally noticed something he hadn't before. On the fogged glass of the back window, traced by a delicate finger, were the words, "Don't go home tonight." Daniel sat frozen, staring at the fogged message on the rear window. The words seemed to breathe with the rhythm of the storm, fading slightly, then reappearing with each new condensation of his breath. "Don't go home tonight." His pulse hammered in his throat. He rubbed the glass, trying to wipe the words away, but they clung like etchings on the inside of his mind. Who was she? Why would she write that? He started the car again, though his hands trembled. The road seemed darker now, heavier with a silence that pressed against the roar of the rain. Every shadow looked alive. He drove with the creeping dread of someone who knew he wasn't alone, even though the seat behind him remained empty. By the time he reached the small town she had mentioned, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The streets were empty, save for the glow of a single diner's neon sign. Something in him pushed him toward it. He needed answers. The bell above the door chimed as he stepped inside. The warmth of the diner wrapped around him, the smell of coffee and fried food grounding him in reality. A waitress, middle-aged with tired eyes, greeted him. "Late night, huh? You look like you've seen a ghost." Daniel sat at the counter, his voice unsteady. "Maybe I did." The words tumbled out of him. He told her about the girl, the rain, the footprints, and the message on the window. The waitress froze, coffee pot halfway to his cup. Her lips parted, and for a long moment she said nothing. Then she set the pot down with a quiet clink. "You said she asked to come here?" she whispered. Daniel nodded. The waitress glanced toward a man in the corner booth, older, wearing a sheriff's badge. She walked over, murmured something to him. His eyes lifted to Daniel, sharp and cautious. He stood and approached. "Son, I need you to describe her," the sheriff said. Daniel did. The long coat, the pale face, the soaked hair. The sheriff's expression hardened. He exchanged a glance with the waitress, then leaned in close. "You're not the first," Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" The sheriff lowered his voice. "That girl died on this road. About 15 years ago, rainstorm. She was hitchhiking home from college. Never made it. Driver swerved. Car flipped into the ravine. By the time anyone found her, it was too late." Daniel's stomach lurched. "But if she was in my car, I saw her, the sheriff nodded slowly. That's what everyone says. She appears on stormy nights, asks for a ride here. Some folks make it all the way to town. Some don't. They say she's warning people, trying to save them from something. Daniel's mind reeled. He thought of the words scrawled on the window. Don't go home tonight. What happens if you ignore it? He asked quietly. The sheriff hesitated. His eyes were grave. Two men. Both saw her. Both laughed it off. Drove home anyway. One never made it. Car went off the highway. The other, house fire, started in the middle of the night. They pulled his body from the wreckage. Daniel's breath caught. The storm outside had slowed, but the weight inside him grew heavier. He thought of his own empty apartment, waiting for him, and suddenly the idea of going home felt like walking into a trap. The sheriff placed a hand on his shoulder. Son, wherever you were planning to go tonight, don't. Stay here. Get a room. Wait until morning. Daniel nodded slowly, but unease gnawed at him. The girl's face lingered in his mind. Wet hair plastered against pale skin, her eyes unreadable, but somehow desperate. She hadn't just been a ghost. She had been pleading. That night, he checked into a small motel on the edge of town. Sleep came in restless waves, broken by dreams of footsteps, dripping water, and her voice whispering in the dark. At 3:17 a.m., he woke to sirens wailing in the distance. Fire trucks! The sound faded quickly, swallowed by the storm's dying echoes. The next morning, as dawn broke pale and uncertain, Daniel bought a newspaper from the diner. The front page chilled him. Apartment fire claims local man's life. The address printed beneath it was his own building. His legs weakened. The coffee cup shook in his hands. If he had gone home, if he had ignored her warning. He turned to the window, watching the rain clear from the glass. For a brief instant in the reflection, he thought he saw her face again, soft, sad, but almost relieved. Then it vanished with the sunlight. Daniel never drove that road on a stormy night again. But sometimes when the rain fell hard enough and the world blurred into silver, he swore he could feel the weight of someone in the back seat, watching quietly, waiting to be remembered.